Here we have a double box and whisker plot, and what it's doing is showing two things. It says the box and whisker plots show the annual precipitation in inches in Chicago, Illinois, and in San Diego, California, recorded over the last 30 years. So the first one here talks about the precipitation for Chicago in inches. The second box and whisker plot shows the precipitation in San Diego, California. Notice our number lines are the same. And usually when you do a double box and whisker plot, you don't necessarily have to make two number lines. You could just make one number line and plot both box and whisker plots underneath. But by doing that, you can compare them. So when given a double box and whisker plot, you're going to be given some questions you have to answer about it. So it's important to remember how to read box and whisker plots. Remember, we have our least data value, our greatest data value. We have our median of the data set, and then we have our first and third quartiles. The first quartile is the median of the lower half, and the second quartile is the median of the upper half. This represents 1/4 the data. This whisker represents 1/4 the data. The box represents half the data. So it says, what is the median amount of precipitation in Chicago and then in San Diego? So median, remember, median is the middle here. Okay, so for Chicago, our median amount of precipitation is 36.2, and again, inches. In San Diego, our median is 10.3 inches. Okay. Which city has had more precipitation in the last 30 years? Well, looking at it, you can see that since we drew them according to the same number line, that Chicago, it seems, has more precipitation than San Diego. Everything is moved here to the right. In fact, if you look at the lowest whisker, maybe, the lowest whisker for Chicago, or the lowest data value, is greater than the highest data value for San Diego. But I'm going to caution you, sometimes there is an overlap. Sometimes you have one low year for precipitation or something like that, and the whiskers will overlap. So be careful. You can't just look at it and say, it looks like Chicago had more precipitation, because sometimes there's an overlap, which means they didn't always. There was a year when they didn't. But in this case, it really is true. Their lowest data value, or lowest annual precipitation in Chicago, was 26.6 inches, and the highest in San Diego was 19.4 inches. So if it asks which city had more precipitation, the answer is definitely Chicago. It says, how else do the data sets differ? Well, you can again make some just general statements. You can say the half of the data for Chicago, half of the annual precipitations, was between 32 inches and 40.1 inches. For San Diego, the annual precipitation was between 8.1 inches and 12.8 inches, or half the data values lie there. You can even make a comment about the range. It goes from 26.6 to 49.4. How far apart are those? And compare that to 3.7 to 19.4. You could say that the highest data value in Chicago was 49.4, the highest data value in San Diego was 19.4. So there's lots of different things you can say about the box and whisker plots, but always keep in mind with the purpose of a box and whisker plot. It divides data sets into 4 parts. It has nothing to do with what those numbers are, but it tells you 1/4 the data lies somewhere, 1/2 the data lies somewhere. You're not familiar with what that data is, but you know that half of it lies in the box, or 1/4 of it lies in the whisker. So understand that the line that goes to the box is the median. We have our lowest data values and our highest data values, and then we have our lower quartile and our upper quartile, or first quartile and third quartile, which represent medians of our lower half and our upper half. Again, box and whisker plots break data up into 4 parts.